Ready your breakfast and eat hearty. For tonight, we dine in hell! Immortals. We'll put their name to the test. Give them nothing, but take from them everything!
Welcome to The Midside. My name is Justin, and if there's one Zack Snyder movie that's inimitably cool, it's 300. The 2006 release not only redefined and influenced the action and comic book genres for years to come, it firmly established Snyder's romantic approach to filmmaking.
You know, the storyteller knows how to not ruin a good story with the truth necessarily. You know, he knows how to exaggerate a moment for dramatic purposes.
More importantly, Snyder's trademark use of irony was simpatico with original graphic novelist Frank Miller's perspective on the Spartans. Miller shared that view in a print interview that promoted the adaptation of his work. The Spartans were a paradoxical people. They were the biggest slave owners in Greece, but at the same time, Spartan women had an unusual level of rights. It's a paradox that they were a bunch of people who in many ways were fascists, but they were the bulwark against the fall of democracy. Zack Snyder's retelling of Leonidas and the Spartans' stand against Xerxes and the Persians in 300 is more than the abs, action, and effects it is commonly known for. It is a parable about the power of myth.
Certainly that story was told thousands of times before it was ever written down. Herodotus wrote it down way after the fact, you know? It wasn't like he was there watching, you know, with a pen going, oh, geez, taking notes.
Ancient Greece, at the precipice of written culture, was known for its rich tradition of oral storytelling. The Iliad by Homer is perhaps the most famous example of a Greek story that originated from oral tradition. Another example is the Battle of Thermopylae, which Snyder translated to what is rapidly becoming our culture's preferred method of storytelling, the motion picture, while preserving its oral roots. The movie opens immediately in Greek style as the narrator mythologizes Leonidas' upbringing in Spartan culture. His diction is grandiose with phrases such as baptized in the fire of combat, plunged into a world of violence, and to create the finest soldiers the world has ever known. The imagery is harsh and brutal, but the audience is meant to see it as noble and heroic as it is the origin story of the movie's protagonist, King Leonidas. Snyder's irony and Miller's paradoxical Spartans are clearly established. This idealization of Leonidas' upbringing culminates in his slaying of a wolf. The narrator describes the animal as giant, with claws of black steel, fur as dark night, and eyes glowing red, jewels from the pit of hell itself. This exaggeration gives significance to the kingdom kneeling to young Leonidas when he returns home, and his soldiers cheering him in the movie's present.
Our King Leonidas!
This reveal of the narrator and his true audience is a visual and temporal transition that removes us, the movie's audience, one step away from the myth. We are just observers as we watch Dilios whip the young Spartan army into a fervor.
And because you have these young Spartans listening, you basically have the excuse of it's their version of the Battle of Thermopylae that you're seeing.
In other words, we are not just watching a retelling of the Battle of Thermopylae. We are watching a Spartan retell the Battle of Thermopylae. This lens challenges us to consider why this myth in particular, and myths in general, are told. Part of the answer to this consideration is provided in the latter part of the movie when Leonidas commands Dilios to leave the battle and return to Sparta as the messenger for his final orders. What's interesting is that Leonidas tells him to deliver those orders in the form of a story.
You'll have a grand tale to tell. A tale of victory. Victory.
Dilios hesitates on the word victory because a Greek soldier has just informed them that the Persians have found and penetrated their weak spot, declaring the battle lost. In this moment of doubt, Dilios trusts his king, and by the end of the movie has come to realize that Leonidas was essentially commanding him to use the impending death of the 300 Spartans as propaganda to inspire Sparta and all of Greece to war. But because we are observers here, we can connect the dots quicker than Dilios by looking at the speech Leonidas has just delivered to his troops in response to the Greeks' news.
Children, gather round. No retreat, no surrender. That is Spartan law. And by Spartan law, we will stand and fight and die. A new age has begun. An age of freedom. And all will know that 300 Spartans gave their last breath to defend it.
This speech also helps provide the rest of the answer to the why of this myth and myths in general. Leonidas in the movie 300 are concerned with protecting freedom from those invaders who snuff it out, a sentiment echoed in Dilios' speech that opens the movie.
As then a beast approaches, patient and confident, savoring the meal to come. This beast is made of men and horses, swords and spears. An army of slaves, vast beyond imagining, ready to devour tiny Greece, ready to snuff out the world's one hope for reason and justice.
As well as his speech that closes it.
This day, we rescue a world from mysticism and tyranny, and usher in a future brighter than anything we can imagine. Give thanks, man! To Leonidas and the brave 300! To victory!
Myth, in all of its romantic power, inspires people to fight for their values and be the best version of themselves. As the audience watches how Leonidas leverages storytelling to turn 300 troops into 10,000, all in the name of freedom, reason, and justice, we are acutely aware of the underlying irony of Sparta's seemingly collectivistic culture. How can a person fight for individualism when he is being asked to sacrifice his individuality and his life? That irony is what makes the movie so compelling, and Snyder the right director to communicate the intensity of this tension. .300 is the first movie to demonstrate Snyder's use of speed ramping to the mainstream. While not the first movie ever to use this type of technique to notable effect, the Matrix trilogy's bullet time comes to mind. .300's slow to fast transitions emphasize the need for resolve in the most intense moments. With the technique, Snyder emphasizes the physicality of violence and emotion alike, the results of man's commitment to his values. Snyder's romantic spirit also enables him to skillfully show how commitment to the wrong values destroys a man's soul. He constructs the minor characters of Ephialtes and Theron to be not only morally but physically repulsive.
Not one step closer. Monster.
The hideous hunchback Ephialtes seems to want nothing more than to fight alongside the 300. But, as Leonidas explains, a hunchback is physically unable to raise his shield. Ephialtes takes this rejection as a statement on his soul and curses his heritage.
Mother! Father! You were wrong!
Ephialtes runs to the Persian leader Xerxes and, in a room full of misfits and hedonistic pleasure, pledges to divulge the secret path to the Hot Gates in exchange for not spiritual fulfillment, but materialistic desires. This spiritual debasement is driven home by Xerxes framing his command that Ephialtes kneel as a kind request, as opposed to Leonidas' cruel demand that he stand. This scene is immediately followed by a scene of Leonidas' queen Gorgo negotiating for votes to send the Spartan army to the Hot Gates with Councilman Theron, a waifish man with a cut above his eye. Gorgo attempts to appeal to Theron by asserting that he must want to support his king, but he rebukes her by calling Leonidas an idealist and echoing Xerxes' purchase of Ephialtes. Ultimately, Theron, just as Ephialtes, is only interested in the material and coerces Gorgo into intercourse, saying, "This will not be over quickly. You will not enjoy this. I am not your king." She later exacts her revenge in the council chamber, showing that Theron was also bought by Xerxes. After Theron accuses her of attempting to bribe council members with her flesh, she attacks.
You will not enjoy this. I am not your queen.
Traitor. Traitor!
Traitor!
With 300, Zack Snyder became a household name and a cultural force by using his romantic sensibilities to reflect on how and why we use myth and show that it is only through individual commitment to reason and eternal inspiration for freedom that man can join forces to fight mysticism and tyranny. I'm Justin Emlizneski. Thanks for stopping by the Midside. To victory!